I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to have you along as well. Today's program is a special broadcast on location. The second time this week, we were at the State Fair on Tuesday. What a wonderful day at the State Fair. And now we're visiting a wonderful art gallery here in South Minneapolis, in Bloomington, actually, and having a interview with a dear friend, but a genius artist and art marketer, Rex Mhiripiri. Before we begin, I want to thank all of you for watching and supporting the conversation with Al McFarlane. We remind you that we're streaming worldwide on several social media platforms. We're on YouTube, Insight News MN, that's our channel, and that's where we want you to go to be a subscriber, to subscribe, to share, and to like. But at the same time, we're streaming to the YouTube channel of the Black Press of America, Black Press USA. You may be connecting with us through Facebook, the Black Press USA channel, the Inside News channel, or the Al McFarlane personal channel. You could be connecting via Twitter or via LinkedIn. However you connect, we thank you. We want to be connected. We appreciate the connection, and we want to grow the audience. The way we measure the growth of our channel, we've asked all of you to go to the YouTube Insight News MN and become a subscriber. It doesn't cost you anything. Just hit subscribe, hit share, hit like, and we build our audience. We're at around 500 now. We want to have 1,000 subscribers, and you can be one of those. We also love doing this show because we use technology to connect with our people around the country, around the town, and around the world. And we are grateful now to have this conversation with the great Rex Mhiripiri, whose work reflects our global connection. I'm sitting in a room that reminds me of being in a place when I went to Ghana the first time in, I think, 1994. There was a market called the Makola in the middle of Accra. And one section of the Makola was an art gallery. And when you walked into it, you were hit by these stunningly beautiful African objects of art. And then the further you went into it, the more stunningly beautiful, the more luxurious, more exquisite, the more creative, the more genius enfolded you. And you recognized that you were in and at the seat of creativity. Well, that's the same feeling you get when you come to the Mhiripiri Gallery here at 90th and Penn in Bloomington, Minnesota. You can see behind me how exquisite, how wonderful, how beautiful these works of art are. And so I'm pleased to have this time to connect with the curator and the artist for the paintings, Rex Mhiripiri. Before we go, let me say that we want to remind you that we join our friends over at the Minnesota Department of Health to encourage all of us to pay attention to COVID-19. The pandemic is over, but the threat still exists. In fact, we know that the numbers reflect an increase in COVID-19. And let's be protected about COVID, about the flu. One of the organizations that joins us at the Health Department in promoting awareness and prevention is the Minnesota POC Pride. And that group is presenting a back to school bash on September 1st. And what they're doing is having an event where they're giving away school supplies and food and some fun games for kids, free haircuts. It's happening over at 2517 Golden Valley Road in Minneapolis, going from 10 o'clock to 1 p.m. So stay aware, stay connected. Let's prevent the spread of COVID. Let's keep ourselves, our families safe. With that, let me say welcome again and have you meet my friend, Rex Mhiripiri. Brother Rex, thank you for inviting me into your gallery here, and thank you for spending this time in interview with me. Let me just begin by asking you to invite people to come here to see and to buy the things that you're offering at the gallery.
My wife and I have owned this gallery since 1986. I happen to be a painter, but I show lot of what we call Zimbabwe Shona stone sculpture. The Shona are a tribe, and I am Shona. We are not a small gallery. We are easily one of the largest in Minnesota, the only known art gallery that has built its own building. We have 6,000 square feet of space filled with hundreds of stone sculptures, masks from more than 20 African countries, my own paintings, and some paintings by notable African American artists like Takumba Aiken and the late Ken Green, Al McFarlane, and his newspaper, the Insight News, have been very gracious to my work, to my gallery over the last many years, since the very early 1980s. You are invited to come here. You don't have to buy anything. We can sit and talk about so many things. Some are frivolous, some are important, and we live on planet Earth, and it's not a rehearsal. This is the real thing. My vision is to be where I am now, where the Lord God put me for my purpose, to paint, to spread art, to spend my money not just on myself. There's a great need there, especially for African Americans, to be committed to good stewardship, to share what you have been allowed to have. The more you have been given, the more will be required of you. Welcome to the club.
What a great introduction, Rex. You mentioned that you are Zimbabwean. Talk about Zimbabwe. Let's introduce people to the nation, the culture, the people of Zimbabwe, first of all. And then here's kind of what I see happening in this conversation. It can change because we are free form here all the time. But I wanted to get a sense of the ecosphere or the atmosphere or the environment out of which your story emerges, and out of which the art that you produce and the art that you have curated here emerge. And so that means to talk about Zimbabwe and Shona people, and they're renowned on the planet as sculptors and as artists. Start with that, and we'll go from there. I've got a gazillion questions, more than we can respond to in 1 hour, but we'll have some fun just sharing.
There are 50 some countries in Africa. Africa, the real estate, is more than 3 times the size of the United States, including Alaska. Zimbabwe is right next to South Africa, which is way south. It is landlocked. It has no sea next to it. It's between Zambia, South Africa, Mozambique, and Botswana. Zimbabwe has 2 main tribes, the Shona, where I belong, the Matebele, who are an offshoot, if you like, of the Zulu. Zimbabwe used to be Southern Rhodesia, a British colony, and was named Zimbabwe after the famed Zimbabwe ruins, which are made of stone. Fabulous ruins which are old. When you look at them, you wonder how the builders cut the stone when they did not have the tools that we have today. In all of Africa, surprisingly, only Zimbabwe is famed for stone sculpture. There is some in West Africa, old, they don't really practice it. There is quite a bit in Kenya, but it's very recent, influenced by the Shona stone sculpture out of Zimbabwe. Some of the artists we carry in our gallery are world famed. I've traveled the world. Their work is in places like Melbourne, Australia, Wellington, New Zealand, Christchurch in New Zealand. They're in Holland, in Germany, in England, across this country, in Canada, in Venezuela, of all places, Malaysia, Japan, and they're written about in many books, and we have the books here to prove the point. If some of the artists I carry here, to put it plainly, if they were white, they would not be showing in my gallery. They would be showing in major museums like the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Rodin in France. And our artists have showed there too. We are not a dime store. We are quite well known in this country and beyond. The country of Zimbabwe contains 15 million people at last count. The majority are the Mashona, the Shona. They speak Shona. It is a wealthy country. It's known to have more than 25% of all the diamond deposits in the world. It has gold. It has chrome. Its problem, I'm ashamed to say, is management. What good is it to be very wealthy and to be a poor manager of your wealth? That is the problem with Zimbabwe. There are many bright young men and women with college degrees who are unemployed, who panhandle for a dime. It's sad to say change is coming, but very slowly. Over to you, Al.
Well, this is fascinating. Thank you for this narrative. And the question comes to me, Brother Rex, describe what you knew from the stories in your family and stories in your community, from your education, what life was like before the Europeans came to Zimbabwe. Because the public idea, or the prevailing idea, had been that at least the European story is that they discovered unutilized and improperly, engaged both people and assets, and they brought order and they brought civilization. And so my question is, what was life like in Zimbabwe before the Europeans? And then what will it be a generation or two or five from now, as the young people you've described who have degrees find their way into exercising their gift and their talent for their own personal and family development, and therefore for the development of the nation?
I personally am cold-eyed about history. I know the history of this country well, better than most Americans, because people don't like to read. I also know the history of my own country. Zimbabwe, like Kenya and India and Ghana, and South Africa were colonies, and Congo, colonies of Great Britain, of Belgium, of France, and that there is a mentality in the human race, black and white, of wanting power, of wanting to colonize. My own attitude, and I'm a black man, look at me real good, of the fact that mismanagement, the greed for power, the abuse of power is not entirely European alone. Let's not take this victim mentality and prevent ourselves from striking out. But the fact still is there that the colonizers did a great harm to many parts of Africa. But the crazy fact is they also brought, let's call it civilization, let's call it education, let's call it cities and the freeways and businesses and money. Were it not for the colonizers, I would not be speaking to you today. I went to find schools which were taught by white people in Zimbabwe itself. I went to find schools in this country, and of course, most of my teachers were white. Well, I also went to find schools which were taught by black people. Before all this happened, I'm going to say we were very tribal in Zimbabwe. Most real estate, most property was communally held. People did not own land. It was owned by families, by clans, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But we had our own wars. The Matebele, the Mashona, hated each other, and we fought and we killed each other. We didn't need white people to help us how to kill. We did it ourselves. And the shame on us is that we are still doing it.
Today?
Today, mm-hmm. in the Sudan, mm-hmm. the Sudanese are not killing white people, they are killing each other. In Somaliland, hey, if you know what mayhem means, go to Somalia and watch your back. Kenya has settled down. I've lived in Kenya for almost 10 years. And when I went there first, the Mau Mau revolution that gave white-ruled Kenya to the black people was just ending. I cannot mention to you what the Kikuyu did, both to those whom they considered Uncle Toms and to the white men against whom they fought. They did things that are not mentionable. But Kenya is now a free country ruled by black people. What is the hope for Zimbabwe? Sometimes history does not repeat itself. But the hope is that the majority of the people who are not stupid will finally find a way to get rid of the elite who are black, who are mismanaging their country and robbing it. Let me use strong language here. Mm-hmm. One does not rape his own mother. That's what it means when people steal from their own land. So what we do, people are waking up to the fact that they can stand up to looking for a future for their children so they can leave legacies of fine buildings. The white man has taught us to build bridges and make roads, and hey, everybody learns from everyone. The white man learned a lot of art from us. Welcome, Picasso. So my hope for my own country is that it will wake up and work hard. The means, the resources for prosperity are there. I must confess that I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. Sorry. And I believe I could be wrong. Even Paul, my favorite writer of the Bible, actually said there is a chance that we could be wrong. That if we Christians are wrong, then we are the most pitiable human beings on earth. We have been deceived. Problem is, we believe we have not. And I believe that if without the help of God, my country is sunk. So is every other country on planet Earth. But I could be wrong. And you believe what you believe, and that is what I believe. And in my work, in my gallery, that's my attitude. My attitude is that I don't belong to myself.
The telephone.
Where is it?
Here it is. How do we turn it off? Sorry. I'm Al McFarlane. I'm with Rex Mhiripiri at the Mhiripiri Gallery in Minneapolis. And this is a wonderful special live on location interview here in Bloomington. History lesson unfolding. I don't know if you can turn the phone off in the future, but thank you for taking care of that. Well, Rex, let me ask you about, the question of buildings. And one of the things that I've read about is that people don't want to believe that the stone cities, the stone sculptures in Zimbabwe could have been built by Black people. Is that story something you've heard before? Apparently there are massive constructions in Zimbabwe, and the question becomes, who did this? Was it Black people?
It is now common knowledge that the natives of Zimbabwe, the Africans of Zimbabwe, the Mashona of Zimbabwe, built the Zimbabwe ruins. Its form is very African. And it is known that some have wanted to claim that this was done by white people from outside.
Or from outer space even.
Well, if they're from outer space, that's what we commonly call nonsense. But now, no one even dares to publicly say the Zimbabwe ruins were not built by Africans themselves. Mm-hmm. They did. And the Mashona, over the years, have been known to be covers of rock. And I have pictures in my gallery of carvings in stone in the Zimbabwe ruins that were made hundreds of years ago. And some of them have been looted into museums in Europe, and some are now being returned to their rightful place.
What's the Mashona creation story? What is the mythology? How did the Mashona, even predating the Christianity, explain the creation of the Mashona people or of human beings of the earth?
I am going to go to slightly north, then center and southern Africa. In Europe, the Portuguese, the Belgians, and the Italians belong to a group. Those in Sweden and Denmark and Finland belong to a group. Those in England and Scotland and Germany belong to a group. Back to Central, slightly north, and Southern Africa, there are groups of people. The predominant group is called the Bantu. Bantu means human beings. This group of people, you can distinguish them by the roots of their language, which are common. For instance, Uganda is Bantu, mostly Bantu. Kenya has got Bantus. Zimbabwe is all Bantus. Tanzania is all Bantus. Example of language, the Baganda speak Luganda. They live in Uganda. The Mashona, there we go. The Ba and the Ma are the same. The Zulu are also Bantu. And when you look at their languages, you'll find some words that have got a certain commonality. It is out of this commonality, part of which Swahili is made of. You find some of the same roots of words. Swahili is Bantu plus the Arabic. Okay. What is the next group of people? They're called Nilotics. And they surround Lake Victoria. They go slightly north towards the Sudan, and they go slightly to the east of Uganda. And one of the main tribes in that group are the Luo of Kenya, opposed to the Kikuyu of Kenya, who are Bantu.
And Kikuyu being the majority.
And the Kikuyu are the majority in Kenya. If we went to Zambia, we will find again the Bantus. So here's the deal. A person who speaks Italian will speak Portuguese before you can. In the same way that a person who speaks French will speak Italian before you do. A person who speaks Shona like I do has a head start over you if you are in Uganda and you want to speak Luganda, because the root forms of the words are similar to my own language.
So the creation story, how do the Mashona say the world was created? And do they see themselves at the center of creation?
I am going to say no. The Mashona actually believe in God. We call God Mhari, and we believed that this God was up there somewhere, and that you could actually talk to this God and ask for help. My grandmother died, maybe 20 years ago when she was in her 90s. And she told stories of a family that was hungry, and they went under a tree and asked Mhari to help. And the food was placed in front of them. I remember my grandmother telling a crazy story of how she was out in the fields as she was getting to be old, but she worked in the fields, and a storm came, and she cowered behind a rock, and it rained a few feet from where she was. I believed her.
Mm-hmm.
The Shona and the Matebele, the Bantus came from towards, I'm going to say, the north. I believe that our people believe that this mysterious God made them, even though, which is typical among natives of any country, people worship stuff like the spirits of their own gods. But there's a name for that. It's called paganism.
Mm-hmm.
And you find that in the Maoris of New Zealand, where I have visited, in the Aborigines of Australia and Papua New Guinea, and I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
In the Indians of India, the Hindus have got 3,500 gods. Spend your life worshiping something.
The Sudanese, pagan, some of them are.
And yes, this, what I'm going to say, may be painful for some people. Along with the colonist, his brother was a missionary preaching the news of Jesus Christ. It's an important fact to know that missionaries, white missionaries, came to Africa to preach the good news that Jesus Christ saves. There's a saying in Africa where freedom fighters said, "You came to steal my land, and your brother came to give me the Bible, and I don't want you both." What does Rex say? Rex says, "Great way to get lost."
What do you mean? What do you mean?
What I mean is, a lot of good was brought in by the missionary. We valued our lives much less than before the missionary came. Even though, of course, murder is murder, we recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
And we did not know, as many of us believe, that after we die, we will go to our Maker. And you don't want me to preach at you, but if you allow me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, the missionary came to say, hey, you folks, you have a choice of where you will live after you die. You are not your body. You are a spirit being. I could go more, but we are talking about art. And for me, my life, my art, and my faith are inseparable. So what do I do when I've got such a conflict? I fight the colonists to get rid of them. I welcome the missionary to preach the good news. You can't blame me because I did not manufacture that fact. That's the way it is. As one white journalist called Walter Cronkite said, that's simply the way it is.
Rex, let me take this point to look at some of your art. I'm going to ask Vash to go to the gallery online and pull up Rex's art. I'm going to ask you to walk us through some of the things that you've displayed on your website, you as a painter. And I had been begging Rex for years and years to do a painting for me of a rhino. He is famous for rhinos and elephants, and has phenomenal, massive pieces. And so he obliged me, and I have a great piece of his sitting at the Marcus Garvey House in North Minneapolis. And Rex, I thank you for that. But I was, from the beginning, struck by and taken by the beauty and the majesty of what you do. Talk us through some of these articles here, some of these items described. Can those be made individually bigger, Vash, or not? Do you know? Can you click on one, or the he has to do it from his machine? And can you make one larger so we can look at it? Oops. Yeah, it's very small, Vash. We don't really see the big image. So maybe go back to the gallery. Oops. Here we go. So look, just describe some of these pieces. What the how do you talk about them? However you talk about them.
I paint in oils, in acrylics, and sometimes in watercolors. The African elephant, which I know I'm going to have to brag and say more than most people, has been very profitable for me. I've painted elephants until they come out of my ears. I paint Minnesota landscapes. I paint giraffes and rhinos. I love birch trees. I love water by the lake. By the lake is not just for the white man. It's nice to go and fish for everyone. And I love to go and catch a nice big salmon, get photographed with it, and brag.
You go to Superior, Lake Superior?
In fact, I have plans to take my family to a place called Dog County in Wisconsin. I understand there's nice fish there. Sadly, I have not been in very good health. My plan was to go to Alaska to fish for salmon, but the trip may be a little bit challenging for me.
There's one of the elephants
and
there.
And there is one of my elephants right there. Kenya is famed for its wildlife. Don't be deceived by the talk of endangered species. There are some folks out there who make money by talking. The elephant is doing extremely well in Africa. Take it from me. So much so, there is a word called culling. Culling is done in Minnesota when white-tailed deer so proliferate that they go to the airport, they go to Fort Snelling Cemetery, they climb over the fence and put the airport in danger by going on the runways. And soldiers and marksmen and the National Guard have to go and take them out. It's called culling. It's not cruel. It's making room for
management.
It's management, yes. And in Africa, elephants have to be culled because they're multiplying like crazy, and they have to be taken out. Not old ones, but men, women, and children. They are taken out by the group. Funny story about elephants is that they are like people. They don't mix. If you belong to a herd, you don't come to my herd. If you have been separated from your herd and you come to my herd, you are considered a foreigner, and we will, on him, take you out. People tell many stories about elephants, like when one elephant dies, they come to mourn. You hear them growling in this, in the dirt and making noises and trying to pick up the dead one. But I don't really equate elephants with people. They are animals, and we are not.
Rhinos. Talk about the rhinos that you do. I love your rhinos.
Rhinos.
What's your interest? Why were you fascinated? Why did you choose to do rhinos?
Okay. Few artists paint for the heck of it, continuously. Few artists paint because it's such a good thing to do. It's a job. We paint to make a living. Few artists paint to please God. We all please God by whatever work we do. I don't paint to please God, but I hope God is pleased by the fact that I have the talent to paint. So, African animals are interesting to look at. People travel to Africa and for miles and spend thousands of dollars to look at rhinos. Well, so I paint them for them. To look at elephants, so I paint them. To look at giraffes, I paint them. I have painted black bears and the brown bears. I painted fish, and I paint to sell work to you. And there is a black bear.
You get that from a photograph? You photograph and then paint it, or how do you make that happen?
Many people want artists to paint animals the same way that they do portraits of people, where they sit in front of you and you draw them and they paint them. And they want us to sit in front of an elephant or a lion or a black bear and paint it.
Not going to happen.
We call that ignorance. So what do? We take photographs of the animals, then go and paint safely in our studio. No one paints in front of a wild beast. For one thing, the animals don't stand still and give you time. It's not practical.
Let's talk about some of the Shona stone sculpture. Vosh, you can pull up some of the sculptures that are in the website, the webpage, and you can talk about some of the artists or some of the art. What makes this so unique in the world? I mean, I'm looking at it as beautiful, number one, but how do you describe and how do you assess, evaluate, appraise, and then choose things that you want to bring to the marketplace here?
Let's go to artists, and let's go to Matemera.
Which one?
Bernard Matemera.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, great.
Now, Bernard Matemera is written about in as many as 10 books, and I've got them here. He is in major museums. If he were a white man, his work would be selling for millions of dollars.
Hmm.
The most I have seen, $250,000, tens of, 50,000, 100,000.
60, 85, 65,000 for this one. Mhm.
He is big time.
Hmm.
He is famous. He is huge. If we went to Mteki,
Another artist.
another artist who is famous,
Go to Mkeki if you see it, Vash.
Richard Mteki.
Yeah, there we go.
There he is. He is big time. If we went to
Beautiful. That's amazing.
if we go to Lazarus Takawira,
Yep.
Lazarus Takawira, I have a photograph of Lazarus Takawira holding a photograph of himself with the late Queen of England. And the King of England, when he was Prince Charles, acquired some of his work.
Hmm.
Now that's pretty big time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If we go to Colin Madamombe, there she is. She has been written about in the local Star Tribune twice. And she is one of the was actually, because she is deceased. She was one of the most prominent sculptress, woman sculptor in the
Is this one of
world.
hers?
Yes. No, that's by her son.
Hmm. No. Okay.
Colin Madamombe, I have seen her work in Melbourne, Australia. She's all over this country. She was a prominent stone sculptor.
Rex, this work is so beautiful, and as I said, just watching this slideshow reminds me of the feeling of awe, but also of joy when I walked into the Makola, the market, the art section of that in Ghana. It's a feeling that I have walking in here, such powerful beauty and such terrific work. And this is work. It's obviously hard work, but it's genius work. And I love the fact that when we started, you said this is not a dime store. And so you are intentional and specific by establishing value. And we're talking about artists whose works can go from 50, 60, 200,000, some more and some less. And I'm curious as to how we get our people, everybody, but our people in particular, to recognize the value of an investment, and that this investment not only brings beauty, but it also is something that appreciates in value. What is the art proposition, and how do we as African Americans come to this so that we recognize this is a way to build equity, to build assets in our personal portfolio as we enjoy the inspiration that art brings and beauty brings to our life? What do you think?
It is said, well, because I'm a black man, I can afford to use that word. I could shock you. and say, I am a real Negro. You look at me real good. We have not had the discretionary money to spend on art. Many of us have been hard put to make a living, to go on welfare, because we have not had, for many reasons, including history, to make enough spare money, if you like, to buy art and to pay attention to art. Fortunately, human beings are educable, if there's such a word. We can be taught.
That's right.
We can learn. What can we learn? We can learn to love each other. We can learn to be nice. We can learn to be polite. We can learn that there is art out there. Now, when I say we're not a dime store, our prices begin for as little as $10. We've got fine pendants that are made, handmade. They cost $10. We can buy something for $50 here, less. You can also spend more. But it's important that if you want to learn about some of the finest art coming out of Africa, you are welcome here without spending a dime. That is some education.
I appreciate that.
So then what is value? Value is determined by you. Let's take, for instance, one of the most famous names in the art world, Picasso. Picasso didn't say he was valuable. People made him valuable. People liked his work. Some of it is not very beautiful, don't be fooled. But for some reason, people liked his work. When people like your work, it becomes famous. It's like being Frank Sinatra. If they like your music, hey, are you Madonna? Are you Elvis Presley? Oh, are you, shall I mention it? Such more. And people really like
You got the
your
voice.
voice.
You got it.
And you could go to Mahalia Jackson and hear her wail as she sings gospel music. When people like you, they make you famous. When people make you famous, they make you very wealthy. And when they make you very, very wealthy, you can even develop groupies. Groupies are people that yell at you, that are so excited when they see you, when they say Michael Jackson is outside there, or our local Purple Prince is outside there. People will come and mob him. And sometimes famous people need to have a bodyguard, otherwise they will.
Sure.
Famous campaigners, when the Kennedys were campaigning, people would want to rip their shirt off of them because they are so impressed with their fame. That's how artists also become famous and that they sell. But you have to have something to sell, which means for you, it's work. And you work and produce work which people buy and make you famous. Once you become famous, then you are no longer dirt cheap.
That's right.
Which is why when this young woman came to Minnesota, some of her tickets on the secondary market were going for a few $100s to go and watch Miss Swift sing for you. You couldn't pay me a dime to go there.
But she's famous. Look,
But she's famous.
Well, let me tell our viewers and listeners that you've got a special exhibit here of your work, paintings by Rex Mhiripiri, the gallery owner. And this exhibit ends September 30th, but you're welcome to come by and acquire or to learn. To learn. I think that's awesome. I interview people who produce books as well, another area of creativity. And Rex, what I'm telling people that I talk to on shows like this, let's think about buying. I know you said come by and learn, but you're in business. And I want to tell our people that we need to get in the practice of developing our personal libraries and our personal collections. And so every home, every family ought to have an intent of acquiring art that pleases it, art that it discovers that means something to it, and that supports an artist or an art arena. So what if we, as a practice, as a community, uh, were intentional in collecting great art, Black art in all forms, books, and beyond? And I'm encouraging you, dear viewers or listeners, to think that way. Let's figure out how we can create a practice, a protocol in our community, in our culture that invites us to become collectors, to collect with intention, and to buy, acquire, keep. And the idea is to keep and to create legacies that we can pass to the next generation as one of the tools of asset wealth. What if you had a library with 1,000 books in your home? And what if you had the intention and you taught your children and your grandchildren and their children that what we're doing with this library is adding to it selectively over the generations, so that in 5 generations, we will have amassed a personal family library of great work by our people. The same is true, I believe, with sculpture and with paintings and with art, with music. So I'm saying this to invite you to begin your family journey of becoming an art collector, and do it with the intent that not only is reflective of your appreciation of beauty, but it's also a selfish investment. I'm saying bring the investor idea forward. When you buy art, you spend $10, you spend $10,000, you spend $100,000, but you invest in a product that will appreciate in value because you and other people know that this is valuable. So think about that and get your art eye on and come by and visit my friend, my brother, Rex Mhiripiri at the Mhiripiri Gallery at 90th and Penn Avenue in Bloomington. And he's open every day, 5 days a week, Rex?
6.
6 days a week. And come by and you'll enjoy talking to him because he's got a lot to say. And he doesn't mind pushing you, mixing it up with you, exploring you, and listening to you as well. Well, Rex, we're about out of time here. Got a couple of minutes. What are your thoughts? Any message you want to leave? And, I knew, I told you this before, that your commitment to your faith is the center of your life. And I knew and expected you to make your declarations about the importance of the value of Christianity and your commitment to sharing the good news. And if you want to close this program in that voice, I welcome it. And I thank you for allowing me to be here. I always enjoy this conversation. Rex, we got about a minute. What do you think?
When you come, we will give you one of my lithographs on the house. And you can walk out with it without paying for it. You can choose out of 10. My own attitude towards, I am 88 years old now, and I have a fine family, if you like, 7 children, all of them with a minimum of 1 college degree, which includes Yale and Harvard, school superintendent, teachers, businessmen. The Lord has put people in my life that I call friends, that love me, and I'm grateful to have people come into my life
Got to wrap it up.
and share with me as I share with them, because it's more than just making a dollar. I think that we people, I'm going to address one quick one to black men. A man who is strong loves and respects his women.
We got to leave it there. Listen, Rex, thank you so much. One thing I'm going to add, you're going to offer a lithograph if anybody listening or watching comes in. I'm going to add to that for you. I brought with me a number of tickets to the Renaissance Fair, which goes on weekends for the next several weeks. We'll leave those with you, and at your discretion, you can gift those tickets to people that come to view you and that you're giving the lithograph to as well. Well, listen, end of the program, great conversation. Thanks to my guest, Rex Mhiripiri. Thanks for having the program hosted here at the Mhiripiri Gallery. We invite you to come out and enjoy, learn, and buy. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next time.